Welcome to No Longer Conformed. I'm Erik Garthe. We are considering ministry limitations, a study of God's broken servants. In this session, we'll be looking at 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 to 21, the story of Elijah. Tired, fatigued, exhausted, worn out, overworked, overwhelmed, overcommitted, overextended, overloaded. Do any of those words feel familiar to you? We find load limits on trucks, on elevators, on bridges, and other places. Wouldn't it be helpful if we knew our personal load limit? When we fail to understand our limits, sooner or later, we will break down. Let's look in and see a spiritual giant named Elijah. He reached his breaking point. God later refreshed him and rebuilt his strength. But let's ask the question, what straw broke Elijah's back in the first place? Well, look at 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 1. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. And then Jezebel sent a message to Elijah saying, "So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. When Elijah heard about the threat of the wicked Queen Jezebel, he had a major panic attack. He fled into the desert and thought about suicide. That seems like an overreaction for such a courageous man whom God had just used to face down the 450 prophets of Baal. The man of God had reached his load limit. He just couldn't take any more. When you overreact to a comparatively small problem, it could be an indication you're loaded to your limit. Migraine, headaches, ulcers, high blood pressure, panic attacks, temper flare-ups, depression, and insomnia can indicate the need for some refreshment. Elijah needed help. The Lord knows our limitations. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Let's consider the strategy that brought Elijah back. In our text, we can clearly see 5 aspects of the process God used to get his servant back to work. First, Elijah complained in prayer. Verse 4. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. And he said, "It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." Sometimes you just need to vent to God or someone who doesn't mind hearing it, to release the pent-up pressures and frustrations. Second, Elijah slept for renewal. First part of verse 5, second part of verse 6. Then he lay and slept under a broom tree. And then it says he lay down again. Sleep deprivation makes the stresses of life far more difficult to bear. Elijah needed some time to rest his tired mind and body. Third, Elijah ate and drank for refreshment. Look at verse 5. Then he lay and slept under a broom tree. As he lay and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came back the second time, touched him, and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." So he arose and ate and drank, and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. Busy people often are guilty of eating on the run. They tend to neglect a healthy diet and proper hydration. They depend on caffeine and nicotine or alcohol or pills to maintain their impossible pace. Elijah probably didn't depend on such habits, but he may have been too busy to sit at a table and enjoy a good meal. Fourth, Elijah worshiped and listened to God. Verse 8. So he arose and ate and drank, and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. And there he went into a cave and spent the night in that place. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And so he said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. So it was, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life." And then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king of Syria. Also, you shall anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Maholah, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. It shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." After physically regaining strength, Elijah went to Mount Horeb for a spiritual retreat. It was there that he heard the voice of God that drowned out the threats of Jezebel. And then God gave the prophet a new insight. He wasn't the only one going through difficulties. God had 7,000 faithful who had also faced the same enemy. It's encouraging to know that you're not alone in struggles. Others have survived. So can you. Psalm 46 and verse 7, "The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge." And then fifth, Elijah shared God's new assignment. Verse 19, "So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 oxen, 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he was with the 12th. And then Elijah passed by him and threw his mantle on him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Please, let me kiss my father and mother, and then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back, for what have I done to you?" So Elisha turned back from there and took a yoke of oxen and slaughtered them and boiled their flesh using the oxen's equipment and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and became his servant. Listen, God gave Elijah a new assignment. Look at it again there in verse 15. Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also you shall anoint Jehu as king over, the son of Nimshi as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Maholah, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. It shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill." So God gave Elijah a new assignment, but God brought Elisha to assist him and then replace him. Sharing a load is necessary. Those who survive must learn to do what God assigns. No one can do all that needs to be done. Each person must prayerfully determine the portion of the load that God has for him to bear. No more and no less. John 17, verse 4. "I have glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work you have given to me." Do you recognize yourself in Elijah's situation? Maybe you need the steps God led Elijah through so that you may find rest and refreshment for your soul. You think about that, and you have a great day.